What up, TCK Potters? I'm your host, Craig Wasco. This is episode 197 of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast. Coming from the bedroom today. I had to make a little studio adjustment. The missus is running some aerobics classes from the living room, so we got to do what we can here to make the moves here. But we are joining once again with our man, Jonathan Rifkind. I think you might just become a staple here on the podcast, bro. This is 6 episodes in a row. We love having you. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling fantastic. Every time I come back, I just feel better and better. So, yeah, I mean, let's just keep – I don't want to steal the spotlight away from Lukas, though. I think Lukas needs his spot as the true consistent co-host. So I think we'll cap it at the 6th episode, and then, I'll be on my merry way.
Well, I'm not very shy about turning the reins over to Lukas as our team captain, so he's not going anywhere. Lukas, how you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling good. I'm ready to break down how bad the Eagles and Packers drafted for sure.
Well, let's not bury the lead too long. We'll jump right into it. If you missed Tuesday's episode, make sure you dial it back. We broke down the entire AFC team by team, and we went through division, so not in order of draft pick per se, as in we did not cover Joe Burrow going first overall. We covered them when we got to the Bengals as a team. So we're going to be doing that again today, breaking down the NFC. We'll start with the West. We'll go to the North, South, and East as divisions. I'll throw it out to the guys, and we'll get through it here. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment on your favorite NFC grabs, and also make sure to share and subscribe on the podcast as well. All right, boys, let's jump right into it. We'll start with the Super Bowl runner-ups. San Francisco 49ers, 5 picks, just 5 picks this year in the draft, second fewest picks in the NFC. Plus, they had a couple of free agent grabs and trades. I'll go over those first because they didn't do a lot on the draft board per se, but they were busy over the weekend, and I loved these personally as a 49er fan. To pick up Trent Williams, who slides in for Joe Staley, longtime tackle who retired here. So Trent Williams, they pick him up from Washington. They bring in Matt Breida in a trade with Miami and Marquise Goodwin. I had Chris Godwin in my head. Sorry. Marquise Goodwin heads over to the Eagles as well. So the Niners making some moves here, making some way for some of those running backs, some of those receivers. Pretty crowded offensive unit in general. And then on the draft board, the 25th pick, they pick up Brandon Ayuk, which I know we like from Arizona State. They pick up another tight end for George Kittle there, a blocking tight end. Then Jawan Jennings out of Tennessee here, and Javon Kinlaw filling in for DeVorest Buckner, who moved on, of course, to the Colts. So lots to unpack here for the 49ers. Jonathan, we'll turn to you first. How do you feel about the Niners? We talked about Ayuk quite a bit out of ASU, and he went with the 25th pick overall. There were still a number of wide receiver weapons, but they went with Ayuk on this one.
Yeah, when they traded up, I texted you and I said, before the pick was done, I said either Shenault or Ayuk, and they went with Ayuk. And you can't go wrong with either. Ayuk fits better because they're trying to replace Emmanuel Sanders. Obviously, that's a big loss in terms of speed, vertical threat, route running, ball tracking, man-on-man separation. And that's sort of what Ayuk brings you. He's only 6 feet. He's 205 pounds. He's not the biggest guy, but he is really good in man-on-man coverage, which you don't see a lot of in college football, especially the Pac-12, a lot of cover 2 sets. But in the NFL, you see it a lot. So he has the speed to create separation. And I think that he complements, obviously, George Kittle really well. He complements Godwin pretty well. I think that the biggest concern with him are his hands, because he did have a couple of really badly dropped passes last year from Jaden Daniels, and that may once again be sort of a quip for 49ers fans if that does happen. But it's a growing curve. It's a learning curve for him. And if you look at his progressions over the last 2 years, he was a transfer from a community college that you barely hear about in college football. It's gonna be a good showing for Ayuk. I think not for the first few weeks, but thereafter he'll get into the flow of things. Major catching radius for a guy who's only 6 feet. So I really like this pick. I'm glad they traded up. Obviously replaced DeForest Buckner with the prior pick with Kinlaw, like you said. So those two needs were immediately met once the first round was ended. And I think, I don't know, Sky, you can tell me as a 49ers fan, between rounds 2 and 4, were you upset that they didn't have any picks, or were you happy that they replaced the DeForest Buckner pick and they got the speedy wide receiver from Arizona State?
The latter. I was fine with it. Here's the deal. I mean, without doing the 49er homerness, like, we're good. As long as Jimmy has his shit together, we'll be fine. And their defense is stacked for a long time. DeForest Buckner leaving, I thought was a little bit of a head turner when it happened, and they picked up the 13th pick with the Colts and all that. That was kind of a, okay, but our defensive line is still pretty stoked. Then they come out, and we've been talking about it on the podcast for a while. What were they going to do? Of course, I wanted CeeDee Lamb, or if he fell, I wanted T. Higgins or something like that. Those were my receiver choices. But for them to go and get Kinlaw, who's a fucking animal, to basically replace DeForest Buckner, I like quite a bit, honestly, just because it's a team need. They win the trenches in pretty much every game. I'm going to turn Lukas loose on the Packers here in just a little bit. But the biggest thing with the Packers and why that draft was so shitty is that the Niners ran all over them in the NFC Championship game, and they stuffed the run as well, and the Packers didn't do anything about it. So I think the Niners just reloaded, which is great. Ayuk, I'm okay with. Lukas, I'll turn to you really quick. We're going to go into fantasy implications stuff next week and break this down deeper on each team. But very quickly, does this help or hurt Deebo Samuel?
I think it stays the same. I mean, you look at it, like I was saying, I know we brought it up. I didn't want them to take a Judy or Lamb because it's not how their offense runs. I think teams that needed the help on offense, you saw this draft, like stuck with the game plan. Like the Broncos, they went and got all-out speed. The Niners, they got Ayuk. He specializes in yards after the catch, just like Deebo, just like Kittle. Sanders kind of obviously not on the team anymore. Kendrick Bourne's like your big possession guy. So they really stuck with what this offense is going to do. So to me, this helps the team more than trying to bring in Judy or Lamb, who's going to command a high target share, not fit the offensive scheme, and just kind of want to be the overall identity of the offense. And I don't think Ayuk is going to want to do that because I think he saw what Samuel did last year and he was efficient with the touches he had. So I think it was, as much as I don't know, it was the number one receiver, like straight up on their board, is what they said after the draft. So I'm glad they like went out and got their guy without like trying to mess around too much and be too flashy with CeeDee Lamb early or Jerry Jeudy early.
Yeah, I agree. And Jonathan, to come back to your point really quick, as far as the second, third, fourth rounds not having any picks, I thought they did well picking up, again, another tackle, a tight end, and a receiver late in the draft. So, again, filled some more depth. But also, again, they were very busy anyway. They didn't have a lot of draft picks, but scooping Trent Williams, who's basically been on the block for a year and a half, for them to pick him up when Joe Staley leaves was massive. And then to swap out Breida for some more room, and then Goodwin as well, just kind of taking up space on that roster. First of all, I think helps all the other assets for the 49ers, running backs and receivers, but it also gives Breida and Goodwin as individuals more opportunity somewhere else. So frankly, it wasn't a super sexy draft by any means, but 2 years ago, the Niners were one of the worst teams in the league. And I didn't know what to think about Deebo Samuel, who was awesome, but like, is he going to change our whole team? And this year, we don't have a lot of gaps to fill. And those that we did, I think we did a great job with defensive line and offensive line, which is how the 49ers are run. So honestly, as a 49er fan, I was pretty pumped on the draft overall.
And the last thing I'll say, I think at the end of the draft, you guys got Ja'Wan Jennings out of Tennessee. It's interesting because on our last podcast, you asked Lukas and I, Guy, you said, what's your favorite or most surprising pick of the draft? And I said KJ Hill, the 7th round, going to the Chargers, was a great pick. I'm not going to say he's my favorite, and I'm sure we're going to talk about every team here, but to get Jennings, who had a 7.5 yards after catch stat at Tennessee, who was literally the only offense behind arguably the worst team in the SEC, a team that lost to Georgia Southern in the first game of the season, lost to BYU in double overtime. I mean, this guy, I think he forced 30 missed tackles this season. It was insane for that to be on that team and to do what he did. So that was also a great pick at the end of the draft by the 49ers to just stack playmakers.
Love it. Awesome. Let's move on to the Seahawks. Seahawks had 6 picks. Carson escapes for now, at least. I want to hear about DJ Dallas here in just a little bit, but the Seahawks have been a very interesting team. They haven't done a lot of splash moves in drafts that I can remember. Even the guys that we know and love now, the Tyler Lockett's, the DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson, some of those guys, like those weren't big splash draft picks. They just happened to work out. And that continues this year. They had the 2 linebackers, a guard, and then they picked up Colby Parkinson out of Stanford, who we talked about that we like. The problem is he's the 4th tight end on the depth chart right now for the Seahawks. So that's interesting for Disley, Hollister, and Greg Olsen, who, of course, they bring over from Carolina. DJ Dallas, running back out of Miami, who's Carson's handcuff, I guess, maybe Rashad Penny. And then Freddie Swain, wide receiver from Florida. Lukas, are the Seahawks just in a position similar to the 49ers where they didn't necessarily have a lot of gaps to fill, or are they just not making it happen? I think Pete Carroll is one of the top 5 coaches in the league overall and gets the most out of his talent, but I can't remember a Seahawk draft in the last handful of years where I came out saying, whoa, they crushed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird because they're a team that has so many needs, but then like you come down to the draft, they never address them, and they're always in the playoffs every single year. It's just, I don't want to say
because they have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league.
Yeah, like I don't want to say if they had a good draft because like who's to say the guys that they perceivably should have taken were good because we don't know. They haven't played a single snap. Like Jordan Brooks and Darrell Taylor could be all pro linebackers for all we know. We don't know how it's going to play out. But if like it's just so weird because I think if you look at like DJ Dallas, like he was not even close to like the highest upside running back on the board, and you'd think that that's what they'd be drafting for when they have Chris Carson, Rashad Penny if he's healthy. Like I mean, they brought back beast mode for Christ's sake because they had that big of a gap at running back. So it's just interesting the way they approach. Like I want to see like post draft like their board of players, like just to see how they're ranked, and how they evaluate players because I have no like LJ Collier last year was their first round pick, and they traded down with I think they had 2 first rounders or something last year. But it's just weird the way they go about their draft because it's so dysfunctional. But then you look at it afterwards and it's oh yeah they're a playoff team 1 game away from the NFC Championship like every single year.
Anything to add, Riff?
No, I'm underwhelmed by any of the players that might be fantasy relevant. Kobe Parkinson's going to turn into a fullback, and yeah, I don't know with DJ Dallas. I don't know what he's doing on this team. I don't really know what he was doing getting picked 38th overall in the 4th round. But I don't know if you guys have listened at all to the Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll podcast that the Ringer's been doing, but I love Pete Carroll because I grew up a USC fan, and then luckily I wasn't a USC fan when all this shit happened, so I still love Pete Carroll. But listening to that podcast has it's brand new, has made me love him even more and trust him even more. So I just trust he knows what he's doing, but I don't see a lot of fantasy relevance off the bat from basically anybody that they drafted.
10 seconds or less, both of you guys. Are you confident Rashad Penny is going to turn out?
Not a chance. It would have happened by now behind that offensive line if it was going to happen.
Well, he's a stud. He's another one of these running backs that the talent is clearly there. He just can't stay healthy. And he had glimpses last year, and then he blew his leg out.
Yeah.
I love San Diego State. I want everybody from San Diego State to do well. Unfortunately, I think Rashad Penny – wow, that was not the right person.
I got you.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I think his ceiling is a phenomenal college football player, and that's about it.
Cool. Jonathan, quick fun fact here. The listeners of the TCK Pod know this from over the years, but my dad was childhood buddies with Pete Carroll. They grew up, went to Redwood High School in the Bay Area, played Little League and Pop Warner and whatnot together. So, they're not exactly in touch these days per se, but actually Pete Carroll, Robin Williams, and my dad were quite the trio in Little League back in the day when they were 10 to 15 or so. So kind of fun fact there. All right, we'll move on to the Rams. 9 picks here. Downgrade for Henderson and Brown and my boy Josh Reynolds, unfortunately. So in the back of the 2nd round, they pick up Cam Akers, running back out of Florida State, who we all touted here on the previous podcast here. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on that. I'm curious if he's going to be the week 1 starter right away there, with Henderson and Brown being the backup for the last 2 years. Van Jefferson out of Florida, and then down the list here, Bryce Hopkins out of Purdue, another tight end. So curious with these guys, and Jonathan, we'll turn back to you here. Cam Akers, first of all, week 1 starter, question mark. Van Jefferson, does this hurt Josh Reynolds overall? I assume it helps Jared Goff, but that number 3 with Jefferson or Reynolds there for the Rams, and then Bryson Hopkins, does this hurt Tyler Higbee, or does he have a role, and does that mean that we're probably looking at 2 tight end sets more often for the Rams, who might be looking to run the ball more often? I'm curious how you think about that overall offense, who was incredible 2 years ago, throwing all over everybody.
Right.
Gurley wasn't the same. Shit hit the fan. They couldn't run the ball the way that they are. Goff struggles under pressure, and they were pretty rough last year. Couldn't find an identity. How do you feel about them now?
I've always been shaky on Goff. especially in the triple overtime win over Oregon a couple years ago, and he was at Cal. My freshman year, broken hearts all over the place. No, I mean, look, I think he is what he's going to be like. This is the ceiling for Jared Goff. He's a dynamic playmaker with limited IQ and down the field capability like that. It's recklessness, is for lack of a better term. Van Jefferson is a great addition. The problem with Van Jefferson is everybody's saying he's going to turn 24 by the time the season starts. He's going to be 24 and a couple of months by the time the season actually probably starts. So I'm not exactly sure. There's a ceiling on age, if you will. I think that between 24 and 26 feels like the peak athleticism for a lot of these wide receivers. So who knows? Maybe we're seeing just the best of him, and I'm not too worried about Reynolds' stock. With Jefferson, I think Jefferson is more, like you said, of an assurance for Goff than he is. Look, they lost Brandon Cooks. Like, you have to fill a void, and he's that void. They believe that he's the void to fill. Cooper Kupp, we know, has injury problems. I want to move over to Hopkins really quickly. I don't think Hopkins is any threat. I think Hopkins is going to be used like Uzomah is used in the Bengals. I think he's going to be a blocking tight end. We will see 2 tight end sets of the reason they took him, but I don't think any current Rams playmakers, with the exception of Darrell Henderson, obviously, because the Cam Akers was drafted, are going to be threatened by any of the playmakers that were drafted, at least right off the bat, in my mind.
Lukas, any thoughts on the Rams quick?
I mean, low key, like we give crap to Bill O'Brien. The Rams are honestly just as bad than what they've done this offseason. You look at their draft. They filled, Clay Matthews gone, so they're replacing with Terrell Lewis. Good pick there. They took the cap hit on Todd Gurley. Like, I didn't think they were going to draft a running back. Like, I was like, okay, they're just going to take the cap hit, roll with 2 backs, whatever. Then they go and spend their first pick on a running back that, like, we like him or whatever. He's going to be good in fantasy just because he's going to get just ran behind a crappy O-line and just production. They don't draft a single offensive lineman till their last pick, and that is their biggest need. Not a single one. Take all this cap hit, don't address the O-line, and they expect this team to get better. We just don't think they're that bad of a draft because they drafted fantasy guys. That's why no one like really looks at it. It's like, oh, they got Cam Akers. Great. Okay. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting because I know McVay's going to keep his job for the next 10 years just because he went to 1 Super Bowl when he had to have as bad of an offseason as Bill O'Brien's had so far.
Did Cam Akers end up on the NFL version of Florida State?
That's what we're gonna break that down in the Dynasty one. It's
okay.
Perfect fit.
Oh,
it's
man,
a perfect fit.
I hope not. Oh man.
I'm with you.
Every LA Rams fan is seething right now that you just said those words, Sky. I'm telling you right now.
I'm with you. I think that there's a lot of potential there. Goff is still very young. Another hometown kid. We just talked about Pete Carroll. Goff is from the same town. I think it's very interesting with the Rams. I think they sparked the fire, obviously, 2 years ago. They got all the way, and the Patriots fucking figured them out and shut them down. Last year was alarming. It wasn't just that they weren't as good. They had all the pieces with like an 85% Todd Gurley. That's not a reason for them to be as disgruntled as they were overall. Their offensive line has taken a hit. Their defense has taken a hit. And I'm a little bit concerned about them. Also, we're going to jump to the Cardinals here in 2 seconds. I think the Cardinals leapfrog the Rams this year, to be honest with you. So let's jump right into that. Arizona Cardinals, 6 picks. They pick up Jonathan, your boy, Benjamin, makes the cut at the very end there in the 7th round. Arizona State, I'm curious if he is going to be Kenyon Drake's handcuff or if they're going to ride with Chase Edmonds still. Other than that, they get Isaiah Simmons, who's not a fantasy guy, but one of the best defensive players in the draft, 8th overall linebacker out of Clemson. They get Josh Jones, tackle out of Houston, and fill up a couple other leads there. So I am wondering does this help? Sorry, let me rephrase that. In Dynasty, you have Kenyon Drake, who's still a younger back, finally getting an opportunity. We saw him 808 over the last half of the season once he got traded over to the Arizona Cardinals. You're looking at that handcuff deeper in drafts. Are you going with Chase Edmonds or your boy Benjamin?
Oh, I'm going with Benjamin. He's more dynamic of a running back. Chase Edmonds was really fun to watch. And he also, the reason that Chase Edmonds, I think in my mind, was obviously his brother's a phenomenal defensive back, but is that he was multi-talented all the way up until he was in the NFL, right? He was a two-way player. And and they converted him obviously to running back for full time, and he's a fun back, but I think Benjamin, when you look at what the natural fundamentals of a running back, the makeup of a running back are, I think Benjamin possesses more of those. And I think that he also complements Kyler Murray more than Edmonds does, because Murray, obviously, the way that he runs as a the way he facilitates as a quarterback is unique because of his style and his size. But he's a lot like Jaden Daniels. The way that Arizona runs their offense, the way that Kingsbury runs that offense is very much how Edwards runs the offense for Arizona State. And so I think that Benjamin will fit in as a puzzle piece, as a complement, as a handcuff to Drake eventually, and also a complement to Kyler Murray.
Lucas, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing, their first 4 picks are all going to be defensive starters, so they nailed those first 4 rounds. I think they did a great job. Or 3 defense, and then Josh Jones O-line, which they do need. But I think when it comes down to Benjamin here, I think they were just shocked that he was there. Kenyon Drake did not get paid this year, and we've mentioned it before. You don't not get a contract and then somehow change your mind halfway through the year that you want to pay a running back, especially in a system where you run 4 receiver sets probably 75% of the time. So I like Edmonds and Benjamin, because, like, if it's me, I'm letting Kenyon Drake run off, whatever he's going to do, run the ball all over, because he's going to have a great year, 1 year, I think, and then let him go. I think you just run Edmonds and Benjamin, because we both like both of them. They've both shown that they're good running backs. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I think they've made smart moves, obviously, by taking advantage of the D-Hop trade. So we'll see kind of how they handle the money going forward, because they got rid of a big running back contract, decided not to pay a running back. So we'll see if they are going to cave in and pay Kenyon Drake either in the middle of the year or next offseason.
Do you both think that the Cardinals have a chance to hop the Rams, making the Rams potentially 4th place in the NFC West? Which in that division, 4th place could be 7 and 9.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough because, like, they're getting better, but they're still not that good. Like, they're still.
Are they this year's Browns?
No, I don't think it's that. Just because I think it's a completely different offensive system. Like, you run air raid, you're gonna hit 50% of the games, whereas the Browns were trying to establish the run and run play action. So it's a little bit different. If you let Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitz, and Christian Kirk run around, they'll pick up 6 wins at worst, I think. So it'll be interesting, because the Rams' defense is still good. It's kind of where I sort of pause a little bit. So I don't know. It'll be tough. But that's a tough division now. I think your Niners have the edge, but, like, I could easily see those. We saw those games come down to the wire every single game last year. Like, it could easily.
All 3 of them were one play.
Yeah, like, it could easily flip for the Cardinals could win 2 of those and then be division leaders and have all the mojo to run away with it. So it'll be fun to watch.
Riff, quick thoughts on the NFC West.
Yeah, the Cardinals are going to surpass the Rams. Sean McVay, I love Sean McVay, but he has a Chip Kelly complex where he brought something innovative and everybody figured it out. And that's why I say Jared Goff is what Jared Goff is going to be. In this system, Jared Goff, I don't, like earlier you made the point with, I really don't want to get into this because I know we have a lot of stock up. So you made the point where Jared Goff, like, young's the potential. I don't see it with the system because I think the system's been figured out. It's the reason that everybody's running a West Coast offense now in college. It's the Chip Kelly complex. Oregon is not special anymore because now everybody's copying what Oregon is doing. Sean McVay, people aren't copying what Sean McVay did. People figured it out. And I think that was why we saw this insane downturn last year, obviously outside of all the internal issues, just from a play standpoint. And so, yeah, I think the Cardinals are a fresh team, fresh dynamic in this conference, and I think they're going to be better than the Rams. Or they have the assets, at least, to be better than the Rams.
Each of these teams is going to be a headache for whomever they play each week, though. All 4 of these teams, I think, are really good. And in the next year or two, when the Cardinals grow up a little bit more and the Rams maybe re-catch up, all 4 of these teams are going to be good for a long time. All right, let's move on to the NFC North. Lucas, before I turn you loose on the Packers, I want to remind everybody to please subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Drop a comment of your favorite NFC grab here of the rookies from the draft. And also follow us on Instagram at fantasyfootball_TCK pod. Lucas, Green Bay Packers, 9 picks. You could do a lot of work with 9 picks. My note here is literally WTF ? Jordan Love, quarterback, Utah State. First pick, A.J. Dillon, either Derrick Henry 2.0 or a fullback as their second pick. and then defensive and offensive linemen after that. Go for it, my man.
All right, so this is like a whole project to break down, and we got new information today that they picked Jordan Love because they're tired of Aaron Rodgers' attitude. Like, that was what they straight up said on what I read. Obviously, they interviewed him or whatever, and it makes sense. Like, when the opportunity is there to, okay, first off, this team didn't have that many needs. Like, everyone thinks they need a receiver. No, they don't. They went 13-3 last year with, no offense to Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard is their number 2 receiver. Like, they don't need a receiver. People that say it are fantasy players. They just want, insert any
Fireworks.
receiver. Yeah, they just want fireworks. And, like, I'm not going to bash
They
that.
want Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams. Is what
Yeah, and that's when Mike McCarthy was there, a guy that ran 3 receiver sets. The Packers don't do that. They run the ball, which is surprising because you wouldn't think that. But now, with what they have done, they are committed to the run. You saw, and they said that. They went and got A.J. Dillon, and they've had every excuse the past 2 years to somehow get rid of Aaron Jones' carries. Like, whatever the case may be, they've always found an excuse for Jamal Williams. No offense to Royce Freeman. Literally, Royce Freeman's comp. Like, just give him the ball, he'll get you 4 yards, that's it. Carries. And then you go and draft Josiah DeGuara, who they might have traded up, if I remember right, who's a run-blocking tight end. Like, that's it. That's, like, where he's capped. So you just know right away they're committed to the run. Then they came out day 3 of the draft and said that they're committed to the run. So everything's confirmed there. So, yes, it's a bad draft because they didn't draft a single – well, they got a linebacker, but they didn't draft a single, like, top 3-round linebacker. They need a little bit of corner help and offensive tackle because Brian Bulaga left. But then you have to look at it as the Chiefs did this 2 years ago or 3 years ago with Patrick Mahomes, and no one complained. Alex Smith came off an MVP caliber season. They drafted Mahomes. They traded up to draft Mahomes at 10, and everyone was in love with it because he can throw the ball really far or something like that, or whatever his thing was at the time. So I think there's definitely 2 sides to it. They won't get rid of – I don't have the contract written down for Rodgers, but it's like $20 million or more of dead cap if they trade him the next 2 years. So he's not getting traded. I don't know what's going to happen because I think they might have a short leash on him and easily just throw in Jordan Love because he's a free agent in 2024. You didn't draft Love to go sit for 4 years. So there's something that's like going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year or I don't know. They're just trying to bring in a whole new wave with Matt LaFleur, I guess. I don't. It's just so weird that I know he's the head coach, but you don't let a head coach make decisions like this and completely just flip what the franchise is doing when they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl.
So, are you about it, or do you think this is a shitty draft?
I don't want to pick a side because
I hear you. Sorry, I hear you that there's kind of two reactions to this. When it first hit, I was thinking like, wow, backup quarterback to Aaron Rodgers, like he's 36, but he's not archaic. And then A.J. Dillon, who I'm kind of excited about, but they have 2 awesome running backs already, and then not much elsewhere. So I was kind of surprised. The more I've thought about it, though, over the last couple of days, I'm actually digging it a little bit more. And I hear you kind of just maybe unintentionally, but almost made a case both ways as well. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about this right now?
I mean, like, you have to look at it both ways because I'm not going to take a side on something that there's evidence that it worked out literally 3 years ago with Mahomes, or 2 years because he waited a year. And they took the cap hit with Alex Smith. Obviously, he got injured. Like, they didn't think that was going to happen. But they made the move to trade him away. They got Rashad Breeland, if I remember right. And they took the cap hit. They moved on. And now look at them. They're Super Bowl champs in 2 years. The Packers have the team to do that. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are free agents next year. I don't think they're going to pay him if they just went out and drafted the guy in the 2nd round. So Dillon is their running back. LaFleur also had Derrick Henry, so people are drawing those comps, just a pounder. And I think they have a couple other guys on the depth chart that were good, like UDFAs or like 5th or 6th round picks that people were in love with last year. I don't remember the top of the head who they are. But I don't know. I'm just not going to pick a side because I think either way it can get totally burnt because there is 2 clear sides to it. Which we'll probably talk about like the Cowboys next. They had kind of a controversial but not controversial 1st round pick, like in both ways you look at it too. So I'm not taking a side just because I can see both sides do it.
Fair. Quick thoughts, Riv?
Yeah, dumb. This high risk, high reward in the 5th round. This is incredibly high risk and very low possibility of reward in the 1st round. His pick position was a $12.5 million contract with a $6.5 million signing bonus. So what you're basically doing is you're drafting a guy who is going to sit on your bench for at least the 1st year, maybe 2nd year, maybe 3rd year, maybe you trade him. You're basically spending $22 million, on a guy who has
to prove a point almost.
Right. Basically, this guy has no volatility. This guy has injury concerns. He was 20 touchdowns and 17 picks last year for a a group of 5 school. That strength of schedule was like 98. And you're going to sit here and tell me this guy is worth $22 million? I don't care if he went 32-6 in 2018 with 3,500 yards. Justin Herbert had a much better season, and I don't think Justin Herbert right now is worth $22 million. But his pick value is higher, so obviously he's going to get paid that. Jordan Love should be getting paid $6 million to sit on the bench and develop. That's all I'm going to say. What an atrocity.
Fair enough. I'm with you. We'll see what happens. I do know that San Francisco would love Aaron Rodgers' attitude. I've already talked to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and they would embrace him with open arms. Give my boy Nick Mullins one more year to sit behind a Hall of Famer, come out guns a-blazing, no problem. All right, moving on. The Vikings. The Vikings had one of the best drafts across the board. Anybody you talk to, any ESPN article you read, any fantasy, whatever, everybody's got the Vikings as the top 3 draft overall. 17 picks overall, most picks in the draft. They picked 3 receivers. Biggest thing coming in here for the Vikings, we know that they want to run, but Kevin Stefanski took off, but they still have their running base is part of their team. They have a great offensive line. Dalvin Cook, of course, Madison, and Diggs goes to Buffalo, so they need to fill in receiver. Right away, they go with Justin Jefferson out of LSU, who's Diggs' replacement for sure. My question is going to be, is he the number 1 with Thielen there, or is Thielen the number 1 for another year maybe until he leaves? And then you trickle down the board. I'm going to let Jonathan make a comment here about Troy Dye. And then KJ Osborne out of Miami, and then Isaiah Hodgins, Oregon State. And then they pick up, Nate Stanley out of Iowa, who's more just a in case Kirk gets hurt. So let's start with Justin Jefferson. And Jonathan, Thielen is 31. We know that he's older, but he's still awesome. Last year he was great, other than a bad ankle that kind of lasted throughout the back half of the season. He's been excellent the last couple of years, but he's certainly not Stephon Diggs. Do you think Justin Jefferson slides into that role right away, and is he that number 1 for the Vikings?
Yeah, I don't know who else they would put there right now. Off the bat, you kind of have to. I think he's a proven receiver. He's fast. His athleticism outweighs Thielen, like you said. Thielen's 31. We know that guy can basically. He's a converted possession receiver to a guy who, we saw what he did in like 200-plus yard games a couple of times over the last few years. So, so Jefferson, I think, is a great compliment. I think he'll be plugged in as the number 2 right off the bat. I will say, though, and I know I come from a Pac-12 background, I know that I have been singing the praises of Isaiah Hodgins, which hurts my heart as an Oregon alum. I think Isaiah Hodgins will challenge Justin Jefferson throughout the season for that number 2 spot. And you allude to the fact that Thielen's leaving. KJ Osborne's good. Isaiah Hodgins is better. And I think that he's going to jump the depth chart within the first few weeks to wherever, number 3, number 4. And then from there, I think we'll see what happens. But Jefferson, right off the bat, will be a compliment for Thielen as the number 2 wide receiver. I love the pick. I like Stephon Diggs because he's explosive and he was a lot of fun to watch. But I actually think Jefferson, in the long term, could be a much better value play for the Vikings.
As a Duck, and for our IDP folks out there, give me a little bit on Troy Dye.
Buy high on Troy Dye. Buy high. I'm telling you, if you're in an IDP, if you're in a dynasty IDP, Troy Dye should be your number 1. Obviously not, but like you understand the gist of what I'm saying. It's funny because I told this to you my biggest quip about was the whole Louis Riddick. Oh, the only thing about this guy is that, we question his commitment to the game. This guy broke his thumb, played for 6 games, tore a ligament in his knee, played for 4 games. He's been a team captain for 4 years. I remember when he came my sophomore year, I hosted a pregame show for the radio station before, like at the Valley River Inn, before just a hotel that we had a contract with. And I was like, this guy, Troy Dye, like, I don't know. I kind of have a good feeling about him. And then he went on to be a 4-year team captain, a 4-year starter, led the team in tackles 2018. He's going to outwork everybody, and that is a perfect spot for him to land in that system with Zimmer, who we know defensively. He's a little bit more conservative, defensively leaning, and I think that's exactly the system Troy Dye needs to be in. So, yeah, buy high in Troy Dye and stash him on your team for as long as you can.
I dig it. All right, let's move on to the Bears. Bears had 7 picks. They have the option. It sounds like they probably will not, but it looks like they're going to have the option to pick up Mitch Trubisky's 5th-year option here. So, of course, that's a conversation with Nick Foles and whatnot. But they pick up Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame, the tight end. I guess my question is he going to be the next Ertz and Kelsey in that Nagy offense there? They pick him up in the 2nd round. And then other than that, they pick up Lukas's boy, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver from Tulane. I'm going to get your thoughts on that. And then Quez Watkins out of Southern Miss as well. So they get a couple more receivers and a tight end. I gave Lukas a text mid-draft in the 5th round. I was like, hey, your boy landed with the Bears, Darnell Mooney, and he seemed pretty excited about that. But my reaction was just that Nagy can't throw the ball himself. So, Lukas, sell me on Darnell Mooney.
Well, okay, to start out with the Cole Kmet pick. Yes, they reached, but I've talked about it before. 2 years ago, this team was good when they had a productive tight end. Not saying the tight end was good, but productive in terms of a stat line because they used him. Trey Burton, I don't even know what he had that year. Obviously, got hurt last year so that there was no tight end. They have like 10 tight ends on the roster, but it's just a bunch of run blockers and special teams guys that have the tight end attached to their position because you have to have a position to be in the NFL. So I think that Cole Kmet, I think he's the most like ready NFL tight end. His run blocking's above average. He's, I guess, fast, but like when you watch him, he just plays like, because Notre Dame, they play like 3 big games a year, and then their other games he just bullied the defenses that he was going against. I don't know if that's going to translate. We'll see. But I think he's going to be fine in terms of this offense. And if they can get this tight end going again, like I've been saying, I think that's all they're missing. I think they just need an offense with a good but not explosive running back in David Montgomery and one receiver is not going to burn you, no matter how bad your defense is. And we saw that last year. But now you had a tight end that can run block. You can get Tariq Cohen going again. Dave Montgomery can maybe, even though he didn't have a bad year last year, maybe start breaking off some longer runs. And then Darnell Mooney slides into Taylor Gabriel's role last year. And they have Anthony Miller, who it sucks because he's good too, but he gets hurt every year. So now he's going to get, because I don't even know who else is on the roster at receiver. He's going to get the chance to be the 3 right away, which I think he's going to do great in. He's a playmaker, and then say Anthony Miller gets hurt, I think he can easily jump him. So I think they had a good draft, and then you go get Jalen Johnson to fill really the one need they had on their defense, who I think is going to fit in right away with that defense. So I think they had a really good draft. The quarterback battle, or maybe it's not even a battle, maybe Foles is the starter, whatever that's going to entail, I think will be the only drama or like question mark with this team. Because I think if Foles can come in and do good enough, like he did with the Eagles, I think this team will be right back to where they left off at 10-6 or whatever they when the double doink happened. That team right there, I think that team can come back for sure.
I think the only potential competition there for Mooney would be Riley Ridley, who they have as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know that I think he's more of a depth guy at this point. Okay, Riff, any quick notes on the Bears? You'll move on.
I think they wanted to draft Jordan Love. He wasn't there, so they adjusted. That's all. I think Jordan Love would have been interesting on that roster.
Fair enough. What if Rodgers pulls a Favre and goes in division next year to the Bears, who desperately need a quarterback? I'm just going to throw that out there quick.
That'd be so awesome.
And the Packers are royally screwed.
Sure.
All right, I'll let that sulk for our northern fans. All right, Detroit Lions, last team here in the NFC North. 10 picks, tied with the Giants for the second most in the NFC. They go with Okudah out of Ohio State, 3rd overall. Great cornerback there. And then they go with DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. Later on, Quintez Cephas out of Wisconsin. And they pick up another, couple offensive linemen, defensive players, whatnot. Again, IDP people, Okudah's a beast, and I think he'll be great for a long time. DeAndre Swift, we know the issues with Kerryon Johnson, injured constantly. They brought in Bo Scarborough last year. Is Kerryon's going to get another chance? He's young enough to try one more time, like Darius Guice. But first of all, if he gets hurt again, his NFL career is going to be over. DeAndre Swift, the starter, week 1 for the Lions.
I think on short yardage situations as like a dump down guy in the flat. I don't know if he's going to get the running opportunities that we think he might get. So yeah, he'll be he'll be used in short yardage situations, but I don't think he'll be a starting 3-down backer consistently used off the bat.
They've had the Zach Zenner experiment over there in Detroit for quite a while as well, but still, it doesn't look like there's much in his way if Kerryon can't be healthy. So DeAndre Swift, I don't think this was an ideal landing spot. I wanted to see him, I don't know, somewhere he'd get a better opportunity right away. But with the history and injury concerns of Kerryon Johnson, he may get his opportunity week 3 just because. So, Lukas, for fantasy, how do you feel about DeAndre Swift here in Detroit?
This team did not need that many replacements on their team. They didn't have that many holes to fix. Stafford got hurt, so it looked like they were a bad team. I knew they were going to take a running back. I thought it'd be like more of a round 3 guy because they do want to run a 50-50 share. They've never given Kerryon Johnson the full workload, and Kerryon Johnson's a good running back. So I think Swift might have just been more of a holy cow, he's still on the board type draft pick. I don't know how they're going to split this because they're both elusive backs that aren't power runners. Like, they're both really good in the receiving game. They're good enough in between the tackles, and they're just good yards per carry guys. I don't know what the split's going to be. I mean, I think it'll be probably a 50-50 timeshare, and then I would think DeAndre Swift's a better running back. So I think he would win the job or Kerryon gets hurt. So in redraft, I don't know if I'm going to be taking him because rookies always go high, especially when the round 2 picks, just because everyone has the rookie fever, whatever you want to call it. But I think Dynasty is a really good long-term option just due to depth chart and Kerryon Johnson's injury history.
Both extremely effective in the SEC in college, so we'll see what happens there with Kerryon and DeAndre Swift. All right, let's move on to the NFC South. The New Orleans Saints only had 4 picks, fewest in the NFC. They didn't do much. They didn't really have much to do. I think the biggest move that they made was bringing in Jameis Winston, which isn't a draft conversation, but let's kick off the Saints with the Jameis situation really quick. Obviously, it's Drew Brees' team until he leaves. In dynasty leagues, really quickly, Lukas, is Jameis worth the pickup, knowing what we know now, that he is definitely the backup. Taysom Hill's not the backup. He is definitely the backup. Is he worth a grab, definitely in dynasty leagues, and just try to ride it out for another couple of years with Jameis, or are you not taking that risk with this situation? And do you think he's going to be the same quarterback if they don't just turn him loose for 60 attempts a game?
Yeah, I mean, yes, he's definitely a buy or an add. I mean, not in any leagues that I play because I have him in every single league because people just gave up on him. A quarterback like that threw for 5,000 yards. A quarterback that throws for 5,000 yards, one of like 5 in history, doesn't stay a free agent for long. The whole just coronavirus and all that just ruined everything. I'm not saying he's the Saints' new Drew Brees or anything, but I think that is like the perfect replacement because all you have to fix is the mental part or whatever. You have to fix I'm just going to say mental part, and you have probably one of the best quarterbacks of all time at that to teach him. So I think it's the perfect backup for them. Definitely, Taysom Hill's definitely not a quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, like, although it worked those 5 games, it's also their team is really good. I don't know who they played those 5 games. I know the Bears were one. I think the Cardinals were the other. So it's a little inflated there, but I think that they made the right move by going and getting a quarterback with tons of upside that only really has one thing to fix. So Dynasty, yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I can't imagine he'd be under waivers, but in like round of Superflex, round like 9 or 10, he'll still be there for sure.
Adam Troutman comes off the board, a tight end out of Dayton. We talked about him quite a bit. We were stoked on him. And then Tommy Stevens out of Mississippi State in the 7th round, deep 7th round, about 15 picks away from the end. I've been hearing comps of Taysom Hill potentially, which basically just means he's not necessarily the heir to the throne for Breeze as a quarterback, but Lukas, as you mentioned, you have to have a position tied to your name. He was a quarterback, so therefore he's listed as a quarterback, but it looks like that is a role that Sean Payton wants to have for the Saints. And if Taysom Hill gets hurt because he's running around with more receptions than pass attempts as a quarterback, if he gets hurt or something, I think Tommy Stevens might be that new guy. So interesting how they have kind of 4 quarterbacks on the roster, but 2 different skill sets. Jonathan, I'll turn to you for our boy Adam Troutman, 3rd round tight end here. We've seen for years, all the way back to Jeremy Shockey for the old school kids here in the program. Jimmy Graham, of course, who was maybe a Hall of Famer just in the Saints career. And then Jared Cook, who's kind of revitalize his career with the Saints as well. I'd like to use the tight end, and Adam Troutman's arguably maybe the best all-around tight end in the draft.
I don't know how much people can make an argument that he isn't. They gave 4 picks for this guy, right? They obviously valued an FCS tight end very high to give up 130, 169, 203, and 244 for him. All picks that could be of value to the Saints. I love how you used him as a comp, just as with the previous Saints tight ends. Obviously, he's not obviously. He's not going to be Jimmy Graham off the bat. He's not going to, he's not going to be Jared Cook off the bat. This guy is the best route runner in the draft. This guy, his yards after catch is better than any other tight end in the draft. Obviously, sample size is different because he played in FCS school where opportunity up the middle was probably more abundant because defenses aren't as competitive. They don't blitz as much. However you want to break it down. Regardless, this guy has the intangibles as the best tight end in the draft. And he's also really got good as an inline blocker. He sort of has that George Kittle dynamic style to him where George Kittle is the best, dynamic block. That guy can block, but he can, obviously we know that with his offensive abilities. That's sort of how I see Troutman. I don't know how it's going to work with Cooks right now. But I think that this guy is going to be a beast. I think he's going to be a red zone target. I think he's going to be a consistent red zone target for Drew Brees this year, and that's why I'm very high on him.
Nothing else that helps that offense. We bring in E. Sanders, of course, who's a big fan of the podcast, and Troutman I think is going to be great. Even with Cook there, I mean they could run 2 tight end sets, and Cook's had a little bit of injury concern over his career as well. So if he were to go down or whatever, Brees is just fine there. So I like the move. Again, minimal picks. They got 4 picks. You got to do the best you can with them. I think it was smart. They get a center in Cesar Ruiz, and then Zach Vaughn, who we don't talk about defense very much, but he's a beast out of Wisconsin. So I thought that was a good move there. Let's move on to the Falcons. Interesting here for our discussions. They had 6 picks overall. They drafted no offensive skill players. So I guess we won't necessarily talk about their draft per se unless
Sterling Hoffrichter. Come on, give the kicker some love.
Shouts out to Sterling Hoffrichter out of Syracuse. Big up the orange. So other than AJ Terrell out of Clemson, who's a good IDP guy, I guess my question is, this is obviously good for Gurley because they didn't bring in a bunch of young running backs to supplant him. My question is, Devonta Freeman, as far as I know, is still a free agent. Maybe they bring him back. Lukas, how do you feel about that? If that was maybe a potential, and if they do, maybe it's Gurley's backfield-ish, but they bring Devonta Freeman back in there to lighten the load, I guess.
Yeah, this is interesting. Well, I'm going to start. AJ Terrell was their first pick. I saw a report from an Atlanta Falcons guy saying that he was like their 10th corner on their board, and they took him at 16. So whatever. Credible source, but it makes no sense. So I don't know what to put together with that. And apparently they got calls to trade down, and they didn't. But the Falcons are kind of stubborn in the draft. We've seen in the past. But I think in terms of the running back, it's interesting because they did not give Gurley a committed contract. It was 1 year, $5 million guaranteed. If you work out, we'll probably do it again. If not, you're done. It doesn't really matter. And then they go in and they don't draft a single running back. No receiver insurance when we've seen Ridley and Julio be injured. No quarterback insurance when Matt Ryan just had the worst injury of his career last year. So I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't think Devonta Freeman will be it. Carlos Hyde's still there. I don't think that's it. Maybe a Royce Freeman or something. They're going to need to do something. You can't roll into the season with Quadri Allison, Brian Hill, and Todd Gurley if you want to be competing in this division out of all divisions too. So I don't know. It was a good draft because they fixed what they needed to in their defensive depth because they always get hurt. Their defense is good without the depth. And then you go in, get a center, which is what they needed. Their O-line is all fully healthy as of now. The season hasn't started yet. So we'll see how that plays out, what they do to add depth because this team needs it if they're trying to compete against Drew Brees and Tom Brady.
Got it. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Bucks. 6 picks. They grabbed 2 running backs. They have Rojo and Dare as well. Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, 13th overall, who is Tom Brady's new non-Gronk BFF for the rest of his career for sure. Antoine Winfield Jr., which is kind of interesting. You may have heard by now, but kind of fun that Brady actually threw a pick to his pops back in the day, and now they're teammates. That's kind of fun. Keyshawn Vaughn, running back out of Vandy, and Tyler Johnson, wide receiver out of Minnesota. It's going to be interesting. The Patriots, of course, that's going to happen many times this season. The Buccaneers are very interesting with the Brady, the Gronk situation, the new hype, and all this shit. They were already very good, but they had a quarterback that threw 30 interceptions. I mean, Lukas and I have talked multiple times. If Jameis accidentally didn't throw 10 of those interceptions, the Bucs probably win 4 more games last year. They are in a prime position to do some work in the NFC, I think, overall, especially with Tom Brady and whatnot. Keyshawn Vaughn coming in from Vanderbilt, is he going to be maybe the number one guy there? As we know that Bruce Arians wants to run kind of a dual threat running back system. I don't know that he wants that ground and pound, but he was able to get the best out of David Johnson. And after Bruce Arians and David Johnson separated, David Johnson's hasn't been the same, obviously. So how do we feel about Keyshawn Vaughn? And Riff, we'll start with you.
Great. I don't know. I love Rojo, obviously USC days, and watching him torch. The only positive for USC in that Oregon loss a couple years ago was Rojo. But anyways, I don't know what else they're going to do. Are they going to go at Devontae Freeman? So I think Keyshawn Vaughn is the clear choice in my mind as the number one back. I know, this guy he's only 5'10", he's 214 pounds. He can break tackles, he can catch. His pass blocking ability is not great, obviously, because he's small, but I think that the pieces that the Tampa Bay Bucs drafted around Brady on the offensive line will really pick up the bulk of that. The Bucs have a Golden State Warriors feel to them right now when the Warriors got Durant, or when Miami got LeBron, or when the Clippers were able to reunite Paul George to unite Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It has that feeling to it because they brought in Gronk, they brought in Brady. Like, this is the hype team now. This is the quote-unquote super team because of the names, not necessarily just the talent that they bring. But Keyshawn Vaughn just adds another piece to an already very dynamic offense, and it's going to be very exciting. Whether or not it actually pans out, I have no idea, but I think he'll be the number one running back come opening game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, let's dive into the Carolina Panthers. 8 picks, all defensive picks here for the Carolina Panthers, the most all-defensive draft ever. This is just another reason for Christian McCaffrey's stock to go up somehow. I'm not sure how that's possible, but they did not bring anybody to threaten his job. They trust Teddy Bridgewater, I guess. My boy Will Greer is going to be great in Week 4. I'm looking forward to that. Their wide receivers are good enough. Ian Thomas is going to be fine at tight end. And they're going to ride all this defense. So Derek Brown out of Auburn goes, Matos goes after that, and then all defense the rest of the way. So we're not going to cover the Panthers because they're all defensive, but a lot of moves there for Carolina on the defensive front. Likewise, the Giants in the NFC East, as we move over, they had 10 picks, tied with the Lions for the second most in the NFC. No skill players for them either. So they go Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Kind of a surprising pick once again for the second year in a row by David Gettleman, but nonetheless, that was their guy. They went and got him, and then it was all defense after that. 7 defensive players, 4 of those linebackers for the Giants. So the Giants and the Panthers going all in on defense there and not so much on offense. All right, let's wrap up the rest of the episode with the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Redskins. And I want to make a quick disclaimer late in the episode here that some of this information turns out has been incorrect. Some of these teams maybe are listed incorrectly, so I apologize post and in advance moving forward. If any of these guys are out, we'll double check some of these. So apologize for any of those if you are confused on what we're talking about there. Let's kick off with the Eagles. Riff, I'll let you take this one on here. The Eagles had 10 picks, quarterback, running back, 3 receivers, and they seem to have been set everywhere but receiver, but they get Jalen Reagor, who's a great receiver. That was an awesome comp. Then they go Jalen Hurts after that in the second round. Thoughts right away on, is Carson Wentz's job in jeopardy, or is this simply a new Nick Foles replacement when Carson Wentz gets hurt this year?
Yeah, I think that's more of the approach. It's also, you don't want to make your opponents better. And there are teams, I mean, we'll talk about Washington, we'll talk about some of these other teams that they don't want to get Jalen Hurts. So not only are you withholding a potentially big asset from your opponents, but you're also, like you said, filling in for a potential need down the line, because we know the track record with Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts is a different quarterback. He's a little bit more dynamic out of the pocket. I don't know what his volatility will be like at the NFL level. So I think that this is a good system with Doug Peterson, with Carson Wentz, just to sit and learn and develop. Everybody was confused. Obviously, because the second round, it's weird that they picked him. I would have gone with another receiver with the board being what it was. But I'm really not as upset about it as most people. I really think that for Jalen Hurts personally, this was a good pick. John Hightower out of Boise State, phenomenal wide receiver, good compliment to regular pick up at the first round. Go look at some of his highlights up what he did with Boise State. Boise State just a dominant powerhouse consistently out of the Mountain West. Playmakers all over the place at it from them. And then Quez Watkins is going to be buried on the depth chart. I don't know when he'll emerge for this team, just stacking playmakers. But yeah, I mean, I'm regular Hurts, regular phenomenal Hurts. I get it. And then Hightower, great pick.
Lucas, thoughts on the Eagles?
Yeah, with the Hurts pick, you got to think back to the last game that Carson Wentz played. He got hurt in it, and no one said anything about it. We're not going to have training camps. We're probably not going to have OTAs. They can't get medicals on him, and it makes sense. Also, the Super Bowl they won, yeah, it wasn't with Carson Wentz. It was with their backup quarterback. So there's a track record of them needing a backup quarterback, and if you can get a guy that's this dynamic, and you're trying to you're trying to make your offense all speed. Like you can see that with the draft, every single receiver speed. They said that post-draft. They went and got Marquise Goodwin. Deshaun Jackson's still on the roster. They want Alshon Jeffrey gone just due to financial. He can't be gone, but I mean, he's not fast. But that's your physical receiver. That's what they're trying to do. And if, say, Carson Wentz, he's locked up long-term, but I'm not for sure the exact, dead cap or whenever all that stuff kind of clears up. But they could easily use both these quarterbacks. You see with Taysom Hill, it's a dumb comp. That's what they said they wanted to comp him to. But they paid Taysom Hill $6 million a year to touch the ball maybe 30 times the whole year. So he is needed. And I mean, all the people that are making fun of the pick were Cowboys fans, and now they have to go guard Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. So we'll see how that goes and fires back on them. But I don't mind the pick. This team didn't need that many needs. A receiver, which they got, a linebacker, which they got the next pick, and then just a dynamic playmaker in the second round, so I don't mind it.
What do you think about this narrative that they use both quarterbacks simultaneously, such as the Ravens did a few times with Lamar Jackson as a rookie, where they had Uncle Flacco, who obviously has no mobility at all, and then bring in Lamar Jackson as well, or Taysom Hill lines up in the backfield in a pseudo wildcat, but he's a legit quarterback, and they put Drew Brees out as a wideout. Do you think there's an opportunity where they potentially use these guys at the same time on the field?
I mean, it's the way it worked. Teams that run a prototypical offense, yes, that used to work. You saw the Patriots; they had to dismantle their whole team because they can't do that anymore. Yes, the Titans, but they also Derrick Henry just went off, but that's a completely different thing. The Saints, they use two quarterbacks. The Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, they don't use two quarterbacks, but they use a lot of weird formations where they motion Tyreek Hill to the backfield. They use Darwin Thompson, so you have to be unique about it. And I think Doug Peterson knows that. Obviously, he showed that. He's getting a bunch of speed guys to pair with Alshon Jeffrey and their two tight ends. And then he went to a quarterback, which is not needed. So obviously, they're going to have a plan for him. You don't spend a second-round pick on a guy just to sit on the bench, especially at a quarterback position. So I think it's something that needs to happen. This could have been maybe a little bit like a reaction pick to the Cowboys now adding CeeDee Lamb to where they need to sort of fire back with something so that it's not them focusing on game planning for CeeDee Lamb and not having the Cowboys have to be we only have to guard Rager. So it could just be a whole dynamic of making it harder for teams to game plan around them.
Let's jump right into the Cowboys then. 7 picks. Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup get a little bit of a punch in the side here with the CeeDee Lamb grab. But in NFL standards, this is fucking awesome. Fantasy-wise, Dak Prescott, was already top 5 for everybody. I'm hearing, he's pretty much top 3 behind just Mahomes and Jackson. Some people have him ahead of Lamar Jackson because they just don't think he could keep up potentially. Anyway, a lot happening for Dak, but let's go with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup really quick. Lucas, I'll go back to you with CeeDee Lamb here, 17th overall out of Oklahoma. To the Cowboys, I think one of the more surprising picks of the draft, only because they're already pretty stacked at wide receiver, and now they go out and get arguably the best one in this draft. Depending on who you talk to. So how do you feel overall about all 3 of these guys in fantasy?
Yeah, well, okay, they had a good draft to start out with. I'm not saying they had a bad draft. This team is going to be good. The offense is going to be good. But the thing with the Cowboys is this is like the ultimate I'll see it when I believe it team. This happens every year. They get all the hype. And then there's always this backbone of poor management in terms of money, in terms of contract, in terms of players wanting to play there, aka Zeke. Like, if your team's that good, you shouldn't need to require $10 million to go play for him. Like, I get that, like, he was on a rookie deal, he needed a contract, but if you're building a good foundation, a good team there, players will want to play for you. It's that simple. Like, look at Austin Eckler. That man could have easily wanted 11 plus mil and held out. But he came back for 7 mil, I think was what it was, because he just wants to play there, because they're building a good team there. CeeDee Lamb, I get it. It was value at the pick. But to me, this shows one thing. Yes, he's going to be your wide receiver 3, but it shows how poorly you are at managing long-term values. Michael Gallup, you just drafted in round 2. He's a free agent next year. If I had to bet money, he's not coming back. He's not going to want to come back. The production he's shown is going to lead to him being a wide receiver 1 or 1B elsewhere, but that's gone now. They front-loaded Amari Cooper's contract to where they can cut him for zero cap or $0 in 2 years. You don't do that for a receiver that you're confident in. Like, you straight up don't front-load a contract for a guy that you're like, oh, he's our long-term receiver. So there's just something that's like, they're like thinking they're good enough to do this, but then there's always that relying factor on, like, they're always in cap history. Like, every year it's to the Cowboys to have enough cap. They still don't have Dak signed long-term. And I get that the whole coronavirus thing, but if you really wanted him there long term, he would have signed by now. Like, you would have found a way to do it. So it's just like, it's just a bunch of like red flags outside of just, oh cool, CeeDee Lamb's our wide receiver 3. Like, yeah, that might work. But when's the last time they won a Super Bowl? When's the last time they were actually a good team you had to contend with because there wasn't something else going on? So I know it's nothing to do with fantasy or anything, but I think that Lamb will be the wide receiver 1 in 2 years because they will get rid of Amari Cooper. Gallup will be gone. But then they'll be right back to square one with Zeke will be gone by then. They're going to have to find a running back. Is Dak still going to be there? Their offensive line's old. Their defense is all just a bunch of, like, chess piece players, like 2s and 3s at each position. So it's just, it's what you want, but it's not what you want if you're trying to compete for a long time.
I agree with all of it. They also bring in a center from Wisconsin, who is Travis Frederick's replacement, who's been the All-Pro center who retired. I thought that was a great move, honestly. That's, again, not a fantasy thing. It's not a sexy pick. It's not one that really anybody gives a shit other than his family. However, I think it's a great move. That was the centerpiece of that Wisconsin line that, allowed Jonathan Taylor to run all over the NCAA for the last 3 years. So I love that pick a lot. Jonathan, quick, before we let you get into the Redskins and get out of this episode, how are you feeling about the Cowboys overall? And do you think CeeDee Lamb comes in and makes a big impact right away for the Cowboys, or are you thinking long-term as well?
Yeah, I think it's long-term. I agree. Lukas gave a great synopsis of how the next season to 3 seasons will likely play out for the Cowboys. And I agree with, it's interesting because I'm not one of those people like to speculate whether or not players are going to leave. But I think that Lukas nailed it with that. Most of these guys are probably not going to be on this team. And so with that in the back of the mind of Jerry Jones, and I would say the management, but who knows if he even consulted with the rest of the management on this. I think that was the approach with this. And Lamb, I mean, man, this guy, he could be such a beast. He could also not be he's one of those guys that I think fell into the right place at Oklahoma with the quarterbacks that he had and the Big 12 offense, which is just, everybody talks about the Pac-12 offense is inflated. Go look at Big 12 stats. Go look at Big 12 defense. So he benefited from the Big 12 curve, we'll call it. But that doesn't, I don't want to take away from the fact that he is dynamic, he is athletic. And he's going to push Amari Cooper and Gallup. And who knows, in 2 years, if and probably when both those guys aren't on the team, this guy will be the number 1 receiver.
I agree with you. Are you sticking away from any of these guys or targeting them, Lukas, in Dynasty?
Redraft, I'm not even going to probably draft a single rookie receiver just because there's going to be no training camps or OTAs, which I'm sure we'll talk about that in coming videos. But Dynasty, I like Lamb a lot, actually, but not, on my rankings, he's my wide receiver 3 or 4 right now. But I know he's not going to be drafted at that, so, I'm not going to reach on a guy I have to wait 2 years to retain the value that Jalen Reagor, Jerry Jeudy, and Justin Jefferson could all have right away. So, that's where, it's tough to, because they were going to draft a wide receiver 3. I was thinking more a round 2 guy, maybe, Mims if he fell, a project. He's kind of a project receiver, a Hamler or something like that, where would benefit everything. But now it's just like there's too much vacated production. It's 1,000 yards. It's like I'm just talking about right now. It's 1,000 yards. Randall Cobb and Tavon Austin. So at best, you're giving CeeDee Lamb 1,000 yards, unless you're going to take. And that was with Michael Gallup playing 13 games and Amari Cooper getting hurt. So if that all happens again, he gets 1,000 yards. I have a strong feeling that Jeudy and Rager and probably Justin Jefferson will get 1,000 yards. So I like everyone. Basically, is what it comes down to. So it's more of an ADP play for me, which I know Lamb's going to be the 101 for receivers.
Yep, I'm gonna probably be targeting Dak, but the problem is Dak is going to be in that right now in redraft. At least Dak's going to be in that Mahomes.
Yeah, he's in
Jackson,
tier 1. Yeah.
Dak. I mean, well, he's a third rounder now in redraft. So I most likely will not be getting him. That does help guys like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, maybe Deshaun Watson even fall a little bit in redraft leagues. You might be able to get a little more value on those guys. But Dak himself may have outpriced himself for me personally. And I'm a huge Dak fan in general, but that might be a little bit too expensive. All right, last one here. Let's wrap it up. Washington Redskins, 8 picks. They now have 7 running backs. AP, Geis, Thompson, Barber, Love, McKissick, Ferguson, and now Gibson. Antonio Gibson out of Memphis. Chase Young, of course, goes 2nd overall out of Ohio State. No surprise there. Absolute beast. Apparently, he's still growing. I saw a report that he may be 6'8" eventually, which is pretty much LeBron James with some more beef playing on the end there. And then, of course, Griff, I'm going to turn you loose on Antonio Gandy Golden, your boy out of Liberty. So take over the Redskins here and we'll get out.
Will do. Yeah, let's go Antonio Gibson first. Sorry, Darius Geis, you're not going to have a job for very long, a consistent job. I love Bryce Love because he went to Stanford, what he did, the Heisman runner-up year, and then he tore his ACL, and unfortunately he's not going to pan out. Peyton Barber, very non-dynamic running back between the tackles. Josh Ferguson, he's like the tier 4 version of Antonio Gibson. J.D. McKissick should not be on an NFL team right now, or at least up in the upper echelon of the rosters. All right, that's the back end of the running back. Let me address those 4 right now. Antonio Gibson is the most dynamic in terms of like receiving and running back ability. This dude is a freak athlete. Like the Redskins killed it getting 2 freak athletes in Chase Young and Antonio Gibson. This guy's going to complement Adrian Peterson very well. The thing is that they list him now as a running back. When he was drafted, he was listed as a wide receiver. It makes more sense for him to play out of the backfield because he is more dynamic that way, but you could sort of like Ty Montgomery. Hopefully he'll be better. You can throw him in the slot if you want. He did have 38 receptions to only 33 carries last week. Wow, that would be a heavy week load. Last year. But it's all going to translate. His maneuverability is insane. His volatility is very high. He's explosive. It's just such a great piece to add for what needs to be a dynamic offense with Dwayne Haskins at, and we'll see what happens with Kyle Allen at the helm. And then, my friend, my favorite wide receiver from Liberty University, Antonio Gandy Golden, best catch radius in the draft. I think he had like a Pro Football Focus game like a 93, which was one of their highest ratings. Michael Pittman was the other one. Look, you need a jump ball guy. Terry McLaurin, very fast. We saw him break out in pretty consistent moments last year. Cam Sims, I'm not exactly sure what to make of him yet. Excuse me, that's the wrong. He's not going to be on that side.
Steven
right.
Sims, yeah.
Yeah, it is Sims. And they have like Kelvin Harmon and Cody Latimer, but I think Gandy Golden, he's your possession guy. He's very slow in light speed. He's not quick horizontally, but vertically, he's going to get you the 50-50 balls. You can underthrow it to him if he gets inside position on basically anybody in man-on-man coverage. He's likely going to catch it. So he becomes a very good red zone target. Within the 20-yard line, you throw it to the back of the end zone in man-on-man coverage, Gandy Golden will likely have a better shot than anybody else at catching it. And for somebody like Haskins who needs to develop that aspect of his game, the recklessness, containing the recklessness, passing recklessness, Gandy Golden's perfect. He's the guy that they need. So I'm very happy with the playmakers that this team drafted, and I'm very excited to see how both these guys pan out.
Lukas, quick thoughts on AG and AGG.
I think it was a good draft because I think what they're realizing they need to do is a little bit like what the Niners do. They manufacture touches for certain players because it's efficient, and what that is. Everyone hates that they have like 9 running backs in their room. I don't mind it at all. I mean, look at the Niners. Like, they run like 5 running backs. No one complains about that. Obviously, for fantasy, they do, but that's not football. They have Antonio Gibson, Darius Geis, Peyton Barber, AP. Like, it's a good enough room. The front 7 is probably one of the best front 7s, probably besides the Rams in football. They added Chase Young. Corners are a little bit shaky. I still think Okuda might have been the right pick just because how bad their corners are. But I think it's adding up for Haskins, whether – like, you look at Haskins in college. Not that, okay, he threw for like 5,000 yards, but a lot of the plays they ran were like manufactured touches for certain players, like Curtis Samuel. I'm trying to think of the rest of the receivers that are on the league now. McLaurin, other guys like that. It might work for him. We'll see. They still have O-line issues. But I like AGG. He'll need to win out over Harmon and Sims. Will he? I don't know. It's a Liberty receiver. We'll see. But I do like what they're doing. I just wish guys could stay healthy. If you had guys and Antonio Gibson with AP, I think that'd be a trio that would be. I mean, look at guys with no offensive line. You see what he does when he plays. If they had an offensive line with that trio, I think it'd be awesome.
Yep, totally agree. And let's not forget, just 3 years ago, Darius Geis and Saquon Barkley were pretty much DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor coming into the draft. And we just saw what happened there. So great recap, guys. Way to go on the NFC. We did the AFC on Tuesday. Make sure to double back and check that out. And before we get out of here, again, I just want to revisit the transparency. We'd like to be as accurate as possible, and that was maybe an oversight on my part as the host here on just maybe a couple of grammatical errors here and maybe some wrong teams. So I apologize there. Get the gist of how we feel about 99% of these players at least. Before we get out, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a comment of your favorites and maybe your least favorite NFC drop, and jump back to our previous video and do the same, please, on that one as well. Tell your friends and your family as we grow the channel. Make sure to leave a rate and review on the podcast wherever you're listening. You can find the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast on Instagram at fantasyfootball_TCK pod, on Twitter at TCK_, and all of our information, including Lukas and my first official drops of rankings coming up Monday of next week. You can find all those rankings on tckpod.com, articles of everybody, and the full breakdowns. I'm going to let Lukas let y'all know what he was just dropping last week if you didn't hear it on Tuesday. But before we do that, Jonathan, please, once again, thank you so much for your contributions over the last 6 podcasts, my man. You and I are still going to get an interview done one of these days here. So I want the people to know more about what you do than just behind the fantasy football landscape that we're used to now. So we will definitely get you in there. But thanks so much again for coming back on this year during this time. I reached out to you in like December about bringing you on specifically during the NFL draft time, because I'd love to have your analysis watching these kids from high school to college and now into the pros. So thanks again for your contributions here, and please let our viewers know exactly where they can find the rest of your content and what you have coming up.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Sky and Lukas. I'm all over the place. Believe Podcast Network is where you can find my podcasting stuff. I'm the host of Believe in the Pac-12 with what's the best way to describe Ryan Leaf now? You guys want to throw an adjective? When you think of Ryan Leaf in present day, what do you think of?
Well, now that I know him is not just Ryan Leaf from your end. I mean, it's kind of like reborn. It's like,
all right.
It's refreshing to like have this idea of Ryan Leaf 20 years ago and now know of him as more of an analyst and whatnot. So I love his content. I think it's great. You guys have a great dynamic together, and I look forward to having him on the podcast with it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so we'll call him the reborn Ryan Leaf on the Believe in Pac-12 podcast. I'm a sports broadcaster. I'm all over LA. You can find me on the NFHS Network Online, which is the high school streaming service. They basically monopolize all the high school broadcasts in the nation. I'll have some Fox gigs coming up on Fox Prep Zone and Fox Sports West. And then we are currently working on something very big that maybe in our interview, Sky, if that comes after this, I'll be able to officially announce.
I would love that, man. You just keep me posted, brother. Always appreciate having you on, man. Lukas, one more time while we keep talking about the rookies here. We got maybe 2 more episodes, and then we can finally turn the page. I know you're exhausted, man. You got a couple different networks talking these rookies into the ground. But please, one more time, let everybody know what you dropped earlier this week and what they can look forward to.
Yep. FSE, like the letters in the alphabet, draftguide.com. It's a rookie it's a website, but it's a draft guide in a way, just our collective thoughts on as many rookie players we wanted to actually write about without going insane. But yeah, it's everything's on there. Hit rate data that we've referenced 2 weeks ago. Vacated production data, some videos, commish. They have like these scouting, like trading cards, kind of is the best way to describe them. Like what the players are good at, not good at, overall thoughts. And yeah, I'm ready to move off rookies as well next week or 2 weeks.
Love it. And that rookie draft guide is phenomenal, y'all. I'm telling you, it's a website. There's a ton of drop downs. Our boy Tyler Moss runs you through some film evaluation, like how to watch film, which is really cool. And there's just so many articles. Shouts out to our boy Dweez Nuts and everybody else involved with the rookie draft guide from the Fantasy Stock Exchange. So proud to be a part of that. Shouts out to our boys with the Commish Fantasy Football Podcast. Big up to Chris, Derek, and Alex, and everybody else out there in New England. Always a pleasure. Never a chore, boys. Until the next time, this is the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Sky Guasco, for Lukas Kaser and Jonathan Rifkind, and we are out of here.